got run out of Burma, and it's humiliating as hell. I think we ought to find out what caused it, go back and retake the place.
Ray Nettleton came to grips with the Japanese in 1944, taking part in the campaign to recapture Burma. A native of Yorkshire, England, today he lives in Santa Monica, California, where he works as a metal pattern maker.
I think the inscription on the memorial at Kohima says it all. When you go home, tell them of us and say, for your tomorrow, we gave our today.
Toshio Nakazawa faced the British Army in the Second Battle of Burma. Today he is a teacher in Tochigi Prefecture, Japan.
I always had in my mind the great mission I must accomplish. That is, to educate the next generation. For this, I told myself, I must not perish in Burma. I must come back.
In the terrible struggle for Burma, the paths of Toshio Nakazawa and Ray Nettleton crossed for a brief moment. Two fighting men, one Japanese, one British, relived that moment in history. In 1944, Japan begins its last drive of the war, into India. On March 6th, the vanguard of General Shozo Kawabe's 15th Army crosses the Chinwin River in Burma opposite the Imphal Plains of India. Within a few days, 80,000 Japanese troops are trudging toward the towns of Imphal and Kohima on the Indian side of the border. One soldier of the spearheading force is an infantry corporal in the 33rd Division, Toshio Nakazawa.
私は師範学校時代に Being a graduate of Teachers College, I have received special language training in Burmese. This enables me to know more about our day-to-day situation as we move toward the Indian frontier. I learn about the passable routes from people along the way. They are friendly to us, my comrades, and I feel they are with us when we tell them that from our victories will come the liberation of all Asian peoples from colonial rule. We have orders to complete the Imphal campaign by Army Day, thus giving our people a glorious victory to celebrate. Because of this, we are forced to move ahead under great strain, marching as much as 40 miles in one day.
By attacking less than 2 months before the monsoon rains, the Japanese aren't burning but flooding their bridges behind them. If they are not victorious before the middle of May, they will be trapped. 1 to 10 inches of rain a day will wash out the mountain trails behind them. Rivers crossing their line of retreat will flood entire valleys. Japanese supply lines will be useless until October when the monsoon season ends. They are faced with the choice, win or die.
With the British are many Indian troops. They have the same uniforms, but they wear turbans. Their bodies are strong and tall, and we are much impressed by their courage in battle. As Asians, we call on them to join us, but they only fire back.
The British forces fall back in disorder. By early April, the situation around Imphal is critical. At Kohima, desperate. General William Slim brings up his 33rd Corps from southern India to bolster his northern flank. Corporal Ray Nettleton, an artillery observer with the 2nd Division, is already a veteran of the European War and Dunkirk when this new call to battle comes.
The situation here makes our unit very much wanted, and everybody is happy to see us swing into action. My job is that of artillery signaller, spotting enemy positions and directing our fire against them.
The Japanese launch a many-pronged attack to isolate Impol. 30 miles north of the town, they establish a strong roadblock between Impol and Kohima. General Slim has lured the enemy into large-scale combat in an area where the Japanese supply lines are stretched thin. The defenders have one more advantage, nearly 100% air control. British and American planes hamper enemy troop activity, disrupt supply and communication.
Not a single Japanese aircraft in the skies. Only the wicked formations of enemy planes attacking us day in and day out. We have a saying that nature controls man, but on the contrary, the whole of nature in this vast land is controlled by the flying machines. There is no escaping them.
Kohima is caught short of both food and ammunition. It is supplied by airdrop. But so close is the fighting now, the attackers as well as the defenders benefit from the heavenly packages.
We have officers we like and don't like, and among ourselves we have a game trying to determine which officer will collapse first. Many of them are full of the Oxford textbook teaching, and of course we feel smarter than them about fighting. But they certainly are surprising us. They prove to be a lot braver than we had anticipated.
By the middle of May, the British are hopeful. Around Kohima, the enemy is on the defensive. In the Impol area, air attacks and patrol activity render the Japanese supply situation desperate. And best of all, the monsoon, a trifle late this year, can't be far off.
Today, Lord Louis Mountbatten came to our camp to speak to us. He leveled with us by saying, the Japanese think we won't fight during the bad season ahead, but they're in for a shock. We are taking the offensive. You're going after them to bloody their nose. I promise you all the help you need to get started. And if you need more, I'll tip my hat to MacArthur, and you'll get it.
It rains without pause, and we are forced to retreat before the attacking enemy. Most of my company is lost, so I join with other groups from our regiment.
I suppose if one must fight during the monsoon, one must. The only consolation is that we do have better equipment, better supplies, and I think better men than the Japanese. The feeling among us is to fight right through the monsoon and down to Rangoon. The sooner we get it over with, the better. For weeks on end, we are wet through to the bone. Decent sleep is near impossible, and this makes us all the more miserable. Food is scarce. Just some hardtack and a little bully beef is all we get.
June 22nd, 1944. Patrols link up on the Impol-Kohima Road for the first time since early April. The Allied supply line is intact again. The British have smashed the invasion of India, but all of Burma lies ahead, still occupied by the Japanese. By July 1944, the British have repulsed the Japanese invasion of India. With their supply lines cut by the monsoon, the Japanese face starvation and are running out of ammunition. For a few disciplined units, the retreat is orderly, but for most, it is a rout. Between them and the safety of the central Burma plain lie mountains more than 9,000 feet high and dense jungle.
The food we carry, or whatever we find along the way, is all there is to sustain us. I eat as little as possible and keep the rest for the long journey over the mountains. It seems there are hundreds of streams blocking our way, and everyone is cursing the rains that makes them so treacherous. Some of the men are so weak they fall and are swept away before anyone can help them.
It's oven hot, well above 100 degrees. The trek back, if it were straight, would be at least 230 miles long. The way the Japanese must travel, it's closer to 500 miles. Besides hunger and the hardship of the trail, there's malaria, scrub typhus, leeches, naga sores which eat to the bone, and dozens of undiagnosed ailments. The sick and wounded are abandoned. Pursuing allies must fight the same jungle, but they aren't starving, though their rations are cut, and they have the means to evacuate the wounded and sick.
At night, we pretty much stay put, holding our fire to keep the Japanese from knowing our whereabouts. They send out patrols trying to trick us. They're great for that, but we're not taking their bait. We can barely see 10 feet ahead of us. I spend a good deal of time fighting with the infantry because our guns are not much use here in the jungles, and the thick overhang of trees makes it near impossible to fire artillery effectively.
this long retreat, a strong spiritual power sustains me, while others are perishing. Many of the men lose their heads and race away into the jungle. Both the body and spirit have a breaking point. But if you lose the spirit, then all is lost. Fortunately, even though my body is weak from lack of food, my attachment for life holds very strong.
The retreat continues through the summer and fall. By December, 50,000 Japanese have died. 5 Japanese divisions have been destroyed. The other side of the coin, the British 14th Army, has lost 40,000 men killed or wounded since Kohima.
My feelings are becoming terribly remote, even during the fighting. I don't know why, but suddenly I am back in my childhood in England, playing in the woods, pretending to be a soldier. How weird that all this comes back to me here. Time has compressed into a blur. Days, weeks, and months have disappeared for me. Then one morning, an American plane flies over, towing a long banner reading, "Merry Christmas, 14th Army." Can it really be? I ask myself. Then as proof, a supply of canned turkey and potatoes is parachuted to us. It turns out to be the best feed any of us can remember.
At last we are out of the mountains, on the plains of Burma. Everyone feels safer, though there is much suffering from fatigue and hunger. Knowing the language, I am able with kind words to obtain some food.
The Japanese are now under the command of General Hoyotari Kimura. He sees the situation now in much the same terms as did the British at Imphal. His supply lines have shrunk, while the enemies are extended precariously. General Kimura knows that the decisive battle in this campaign will take place on the central plains of Burma. But General Slim does not accommodate the Japanese with a pitched battle. While advancing ostensibly with 2 Army Corps toward Mandalay, where the Japanese are waiting for him, he secretly dispatches most of his 4th Corps 100 miles south. January 8, 1945, advance units of the British 33rd Corps reaches the Irrawaddy 50 miles north of Mandalay. Not having been able to bring assault boats with them through the jungle, the British set out to create the Irrawaddy Navy. In mid-February, the battle for Mandalay is on.
Now that we're on the plains, we expect things to move faster for us. The flat terrain is more suitable for our mechanized equipment the air transports are bringing in. and we should have the Japanese running hard before long.
Mandalay Falls.
It is strange how the natives look upon us now. When we were victorious, they say the soldiers of God have come to save us from the foreign devils. Now they turn away from us. I feel as if I have been struck by fire in the eyes.
Our unit is diverted to the south and ordered to link up with the troops that have landed around Rangoon.
On May 3rd, the two forces meet in that fabled city, abandoned by the enemy without a fight. The 3-year Japanese rule is ended. Who rose to the rank of Sergeant Major during the Battle of Burma, manages to escape into Thailand before the capture of Rangoon. He returns to his homeland in June 1946. After the fall of Mandalay, Ray Nettleton takes part in mop-up operations between Rangoon and the Yanangwang oil fields. 1946, he returns to England for discharge. The Battle of Burma was a conflict between two hard-bitten foes who gave no quarter. But more than that, it was a war with nature at its worst. At best, men got only a draw in that battle. Thousands of veterans spread around the globe will never forget what was called the Forgotten Front. Jacob Claybach is a carpenter today, living with his wife and 2 sons in a small German town named Remagen on the Rhine River. In March 1945, he was a master sergeant and the bridge master of the Remagen Bridge.
Ich glaube, ich habe in diesem Krieg nicht... I suppose I was one of the war's misfits. My record of political arrests made me suspect. Yet it was my responsibility to blow the bridge up before the Americans could cross the Rhine.
C. Windsor Miller is a real estate broker today in Washington, D.C. He lives with his family in Silver Springs, Maryland. In March 1945, he was a lieutenant and a tank platoon leader in the United States Army's 9th Armored Division.
I remember when we were told our tanks had to go across the bridge. Nobody knew whether the bridge would hold tanks, but there was only one way to find out, and that was to put tanks on the bridge and try it.
At Remagen on the Rhine, the lives of Jacob Playbach and C. Windsor Miller came together for a brief moment. Two fighting men, one German, one American, relived that moment in history. I'm Jim Bishop. By the fall of 1944, the Allies are sweeping across Europe so fast that General Patton's tanks are running out of gasoline. As the desperate army falls back on the homeland, Hitler orders a fight to the death. One great obstacle bars the way to the German heartland, the Rhine. The Germans have boundless faith in the great natural barrier of the Rhine. Not since Napoleon has an invading army crossed it. The Rhine bridges and every bridge in the path of the advancing army is ordered destroyed. Midway between Bonn and Koblenz on the Rhine, one bridge is still far enough behind the lines to escape destruction. It's the Ludendorff Railway Bridge at Remagen. One of the German soldiers in its demolition squad is Master Sergeant Jacob Playbach.
Since the beginning of the war, I am assigned to guard the bridge at Remagen. It is good duty because Remagen is near my home. As the war goes on and the armies get closer, we work much harder building the defenses. It is my responsibility to blow up the bridge if it becomes necessary. I have 600 kilos explosion powder and 85 detonators. The bridge has been wired for months.
As the German front crumbles, the Nazi high command resorts to desperate measures. An army of old people and children, the Volkssturm, is recruited. Its members ordered to fight in their own town. With armbands for uniforms and a haphazard assortment of weapons, they will be thrown into the sagging defense lines. Defeatists are threatened with death. The German who retreats now may escape the enemy's guns, only to find himself under the guns of a firing squad, or at the end of an executioner's rope. The Allied assault is divided into two parts. In the north, an army of British and American troops drive east through the Low Countries. This is the army picked by General Eisenhower to make the first spectacular leap across the Rhine and head for Berlin. Supporting Montgomery's drive are two American armies in France under the command of General Hodges and General Patton. Their job, to destroy all German forces west of the Rhine. Commanding one of General Hodges' 9th Armored Division tank platoons is Lieutenant C. Windsor Miller.
Every time we push off on a drive, we're given an objective, a town to reach, a river to reach, or something like that. On the morning of February 28th, we jump off, and this time we're headed for the Rhine. It seems like it must be 1,000,000 miles away. Nobody really knows when we'll get there. My platoon is the lead platoon when we push off. Every 24 hours, we rotate the spearhead platoon because the strain is pretty terrific when you're running up there in the front column, not knowing when they're going to knock you off. It seems like the enemy always has the benefit of the first shot when you're riding along and coming around a turn. He's out there waiting for you, and he shoots first. All the way along, we keep coming to bridges the Germans are blowing up. Some of them, they blow up right in front of us. Thank God we'll get to rest when we get to the Rhine. There won't be a bridge standing for 100 miles. Getting across it is going to be almost a naval operation.
Over the roads to Germany moves a strange landlocked fleet. LCVPs, LCMs, and amphibious assault boats of every size and description move toward the Rhine. With no hope of finding a bridge standing, the Allies themselves tried to knock out all bridges at long range and trap the retreating Germans on the west side of the Rhine.
Almost every day the bombers come now. Always they aim for the bridge, but the bombs come down all around us. If they hit it, we have to repair it. Our retreating troops and heavy vehicles as well must be able to cross it. We work hard to fix the bridge so that our soldiers can use it. As the troops retreat, my duty is to stay by the telephone, but the only thoughts that go through my head are, how can you manage to get away from here safely? I keep thinking of my wife and children, and how can I get to them? I'm not a military man, and I don't agree with this whole rubbish here anyway.
By the end of February 1945, melting snow and blown-up German dams have turned the roads into rivers of mud. Bogged down, the advancing American armor and infantry slow to a crawl. Even after the Americans get their equipment out of the mud, no speed records are set.
One thing you find out in combat is that there is no such thing as good tank country. When you're running along out there in the open, you feel a lot like you're in an inverted foxhole. You just stick up in the air. Most people don't realize how vulnerable a tank is. One shell or one man with the right weapon can turn the whole thing into a torch. Late on March 6th, we are told that our objective the next day is to reach the Rhine. We're heading for a little town called Remagen. It seems to be about 10 or 12 miles away. Ordinarily, that doesn't seem very far, but in combat, it can seem like a long way. sudden, there's the water. And it's got to be the Rhine. And there's this big bridge, and we figure any minute it's going to blow.
A standing bridge spanning the Rhine. To the American troops who will now have to make a run for it, it's either a shortcut to victory or a death trap. March 7th, 1945. A platoon of the American 9th Armored Division reaches the Rhine. The Germans, with their command post now on the east side of the river, make last-minute preparations to blow up the bridge. In addition to the regular demolitions, an extra emergency charge is planted near the east end of the bridge.
Right away, you ask yourself, what do I do now? Try to knock out the bridge? Or should we protect it so we can get across? This one is up to the high command. Finally, the orders come back to try to get as many troops across as we can. So that shatters our dream of a chance for getting any rest.
20 minutes after 3, the bridge guards decide the Americans have come close enough. The attempt fails. The Germans now try to set off the emergency charge. To the horror of the Germans, the bridge, although damaged, still stands. To the horror also of the GIs, who now have to defuse it.
And then, while we're wondering when the main charge will go off, our engineers run right out onto the bridge to pull any wires and remove any charges that are left. The guys doing that job are a bunch of heroes, if there ever were any. The infantry starts across, and we sit on the west bank shooting across the river, trying to keep the Germans down. There's a lot of fire going across both ways.
First infantrymen have made it across. It's the beginning of a beachhead across the Rhine. All afternoon, the infantry streams across, reinforcing the precarious beachhead. Shortly after 5, the German garrison at Remagen surrenders. By the end of the day, the American tanks are ready to try the bridge.
When we finally start to move across, it's a nerve-wracking experience. First of all, it's a railroad bridge. They've got some planking down on it, but if we slide a little, we'll go right in the drink. We finally get to the other side, and I find out that that's the only bridge standing. This means that my tank is the farthest tank into Germany.
With the capture of the bridge, Allied orders are suddenly changed up and down the entire front. An astounded Eisenhower orders Hodges to funnel everything across that the bridge will hold. This is one of my happiest moments of the war, Eisenhower says. We are across the Rhine. March 8th, the Germans begin to react. First to arrive, Stukas. One of the heaviest concentrations of American ack-ack has been moved in to meet them. enraged by the turn of events, orders everything from frogmen to V-2s launched against the bridge. The V-2s will kill 3 American soldiers and some livestock. The frogmen are all captured. To handle the traffic, the engineers throw pontoon and Bailey bridges across. Ducks are brought in to carry back the wounded. The sudden crossing of the Rhine is as disastrous to German morale as it is heartening to Allied spirit. Eisenhower would later write, "We knew then that the enemy's final defeat was just around the corner." Suddenly, on March 17th, 10 days after its capture, without any warning, the crippled bridge collapses into the river. 27 of the engineers who have been working to repair the bridge are killed in the collapse. 63 others injured.
As the Americans come across on our side of the Rhine, I slip away. If the Americans catch me, who knows what they might do to me.
We keep moving inland through one little town after another. Sometimes you see the white flag out, but that's only when the town is not defended. Sometimes you see the white flag and sheets and everything else hung out of the windows. Even so, some die-hard German soldier opens fire on you. We are running into all kinds of people. The Germans just put an armband around them and press them into service. It keeps them from being considered spies. That's the law. If they have an armband, that's their uniform, and they have a right to open fire on us. Some of our men stage raids across the Moselle, and they are picking up some kids and old men, and it's amazing the different kinds of people they've got fighting now. Once I'm told there are some Germans down the road that want to surrender. So we go down to meet them, and then I discover that it's a whole army, and they're terrified of the Russians. This whole army surrenders to 25 of us.
Less than 2 months after the Rhine crossing, on April 26, 1945, Soldiers of the American Army and the Red Army meet deep in Germany at Torgau on the banks of the Elbe. The 1,000-year Reich dies a child of 12. Lieutenant C. Windsor Miller finishes the war in Yugoslavia. Later is awarded the Distinguished Service Cross for his bravery at Remagen. Today, in the village cemetery at Bernbach, not far from Remagen, there are 4 graves that are a part of the Remagen story. They belong to German officers, scapegoats of the bridge fiasco. Condemned by a flying court-martial, they were shot in the back of the neck to placate the Fuhrer's wrath. Jacob Kleibach, after fleeing the captured bridge, escaped to the basement of his nearby home where his wife hid him for 12 weeks. Today, Remagen is home for Jacob Kleibach. The ruined towers of the bridge a familiar sight. But for him, as for those who crossed it under fire, the vanished bridge is only a memory. Another legend swallowed by the Rhine.